Welcome to Dying in Grace, the show that explores aging and end-of-life issues so that we can all become more comfortable with the process so we can be assistful to our loved ones, our friends, and ourselves when the time comes. My name is Arlene Stepputat, and each week I like to bring a community expert to share their wisdom, their knowledge, and sometimes the latest technology available to us so we know what's cutting edge as we learn to take care of one another. And this week I'm delighted to introduce my friend and CEO and president, Cheryl Mathieu. Thanks for being here. Dr. Cheryl Mathieu.
Dr. Cheryl.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming here.
It's great to be here.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you is, how did you get involved with this field? I almost want to say, how did you get called? Because my experience is we're called into this in some way. So can you give us a little bit of your background and your pathway to where you currently are? Just a snippet.
A snippet. Well, it really started with when I was in my mid-20s, taking care of both of my grandmothers around the same time, but I was basically their advocate in their last couple years of life. Now, I didn't know anything about aging or anything. I just knew I was a problem solver and an advocate, and I just kind of took it on. So I learned a lot about what happens at the end of life in different situations. And I also really learned that I was not equipped with what I needed to do to handle it at the best way that I could. So I started learning things like ahas that I would learn along the way. And I'd be like, people need to know this information. So that's how I originally got into it. And then I went to school and got a master's in social work and a doctorate in social work, and then did a lot of different things like hospice social work, hospital discharge planning. I was a program director for assisted living, memory care, adult daycare, geriatric, psychiatric work. So I got a lot of experience, and out in the field, I learned, and working with families, I really got, again, people are not equipped with what they need to take care of their older loved ones, especially people with dementia, which is what I specialize in. So I actually started writing. I didn't even know, I'm a geriatric care manager. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a geriatric care manager. So I just started writing business cards, Cheryl Mathieu, elder advocate, and went into business. And then I learned there's a whole field of geriatric care managers around the country that assist adult children usually, or spouses with an aging person.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. And you know what's interesting about me and also many of the other previous guests we've had on Dying in Grace is that it often starts with a very personal experience. You know what? You're called to act for your grandparents as a very young woman, and of course it's a blank slate for you. That's the last thing you know about, and I think that's kind of my path. It's also why we do this show in the first place, because I also experience people not knowing the resources, and if we can give them some tools before they're deer in the headlights, then they're a little more equipped. So it seems to be, like I said, it's a calling from that deep response of service to your loved ones. It extends out to others. So thank you for that. And so you became a geriatric care manager, and could you explain to people what a care manager is? Because again, people may not be familiar with that term. So the geriatric part I think we got, but the care manager, what does that? What do you do if you're a care manager?
Usually care managers come from a social work or nursing background with some health, so they have some health care and for the aging. So typically when I would initially get a call, like the typical call would be an older person's living at home, I'll just say they're 85 and they're fine, they don't need any help. But the adult child is concerned about them about something. Maybe they have some dementia, which is some memory loss. Maybe they're getting more confused. They're not handling their finances or their bills. They go over to mom and dad's house and the bills are piling up and it's unkept. And so things are changing, but they don't know exactly if it's okay, if they're safe at home, what should they do? Because everybody's just been living their life and going about business as usual. So then there's some warning signs that start to come up, and then they usually call me. They go, look, this is going on. What do I do? So it usually is an event that pushes them to call. Like maybe they're overwhelmed. They're just, I'm just completely stressed, or maybe it's an accident or a fall.
Or it's the holidays. We used to, when I worked at
yes,
the
exactly.
Alzheimer's Association,
Right.
it was the holidays and, we just happened to pick up Dad's checkbook to check something, or there were some bills lying around, and then we realized, like, he doesn't know how to write a checkbook. We
Right.
had no idea.
Right.
And then you see, so holidays is shocking often to people.
Right, or if they come in from out of town,
Right.
and then, wow, I haven't seen Mom for a while, but wow, she doesn't look very good.
Or the house doesn't look very good, or something. Yeah.
Right, spoiled food,
Yeah.
things that they wouldn't be typical of them before. So they would call a care manager, and we would go in and I go in and assess the situation. So we look at home safety, we look at, do they have legal documents in place, like power of attorney and trust and will. Where are their deficits? What are the concerns of the family? And then we lay out, like, what are the next steps to solve the problems? So it's really laying out the options. Sometimes it's they need caregiving in the home. Okay, well, what does that mean? How do you find somebody? How much does it cost? How long does this go on? So usually the person going through it doesn't know where they're at. It's sort of like if you're swimming in the ocean and you get hit by a wave and you're under the water and you don't know which way is up.
Right. Right.
And you're just looking for some air.
Right.
So
hoping you're going to surface.
Hoping it's going to be up. So we lay out the plan. So it's called a care plan, and we develop that with the family. Find out from the older person who's having an event, what do they want? Sometimes it's family meetings, because
Right.
sometimes siblings have different ideas. So it's really laying out the plan and kind of leading them from that point to really the end of their life as events come up. So it's coaching, sometimes it's ongoing care, sometimes it's just, hey, call me when there's another thing, another issue
when the
come
next
up.
crisis
Yeah.
happens. So you created a lot of resources online, and I wanted to have you tell us about how you got acknowledged by Oprah, because that's got to be, I mean, to me that would be a career high to have Oprah recognize you. So could you tell us a little bit about what she recognized in the services that she saw?
Sure. So as I said, when I started working with both my grandmas, I started paying attention to what I didn't know, and when I learned it, those big ahas. And I've just always been the kind of person that if I learn something, I want to share it with other people so they don't have to go through it,
Right.
if possible. So for 20 years, or actually it was probably 15, when there was a contest. There was a contest in Oprah magazine. Said if you have a vision to change the world or your community, write in. So I wrote in with an idea, and I called it Aging Pro, and it was sort of like the Google of elder care. So everything would be on one portal. Everything that I'd collected in my brain, all the learnings, anything people would need to know, all in one place, along with a listing of all the professionals in aging that they could find. So out of 3,000 entries, I was one out of, I think that she chose 70 people. And we all they flew us to New York for leadership training. And
Wow.
And what's interesting is I was the only project there that focused anything on aging. Everything else was, how to help girls graduate college and
Right.
business skills and things like that, which are important. But I've seen for 30 years that we're an aging society. We're getting older. We're living longer. So there's help needed on that end of the life cycle.
We've kind of been aging averse. I would say we've been very, very youth oriented, except that the boomers are booming and now we can't help it. There's more of us. I think it's something like 10,000 people a day turn 65. So the way the needs are changing because the population is continuing to grow and age, and I think the attitudes and you're looking at what your grandparents needed, and you're like, I don't want my loved ones to have to go through that. You don't want your daughter to have to work with that. You want things in place. So that's really congratulations for your vision and for doing it. And And now you mentioned that you have a specialty in dementia, and you've come up with, using cutting edge technology to help with dementia care. So could you explain, I think you call it virtual care management, and now we know what care management is. So tell us about your vision and also what you perceive as the need, like why dementia, it's rising. What do you see is going on out there?
So thanks for asking. I'm really excited about this new product. It's a digital product called Age Sage, the Age Sage Compass, which is meant to, so we'll back up. So cutting edge technology, it delivers via text message and via app support for caregivers that have loved ones with dementia. So typically what happens if someone has a loved one with dementia, or what we'll call, mom has some memory loss, or she's getting confused, and the adult child watches it for a while, and then it gets more and more challenging, and bring it to the doctor, and the doctor may say, or may not say, you have dementia. Actually, 50% of the people that have a dementia diagnosis on their medical chart were never told by the doctor that they have it, because that's a hard conversation for the doctor to have, and they only have 10 minutes. And almost no doctor that I know of has the resources to offer the family.
Right.
So they really focus on the medical piece. But there's this whole social piece, because I've seen at home what the families need. So if you get a dementia diagnosis, there's really nothing to cure it right now. There's some things that we can do to slow it down and rule it out.
Right.
But usually they'll say, like, you have dementia, goodbye and good luck. And the family is really left to deal with it on their own. Sometimes they'll call the Alzheimer's Association for help. That's probably the main one that people think of, but there's not a lot of help out there. Some people know to call care managers like myself, but we can be expensive, and not everybody can afford it, because most of the time insurance doesn't pay for it. So after so many years of working with people, I've noticed there are a lot of commonalities that can, I wanted to scale my work. So instead of helping just the people around my community, I wanted to impact and assist a lot more people, because there's so many people out there that need the guidance. So Age Sage it's a product that will deliver the information and the support, and it'll be tailored and customized for whatever stage the loved one is in. So sometimes in the beginning stages of Alzheimer's or dementia, a person needs a different care than someone near the end.
Certainly.
So that information will be available, right on their cell phone, their smartphone, or the web. So we're working on getting cutting edge technology to support the people out there. And one of my first clients, she needed to be placed into a nursing home because she had dementia. The son, who was 35, was so overwhelmed with this whole situation and not taking care of himself that during this transition, he ended up dropping dead of a heart attack. And this was my first client.
Wow.
The son died because of the stress of caregiving. And the stress of caregiving can take up to 10 years off a caregiver's life. So since then, it was just this message, sometimes things are just delivered and you're like, this is for me to pay attention.
Right.
So really my message for caregivers is you've got to make self-care number one.
And it's such a hard message for caregivers.
Right.
It's so hard for them because the demands and the needs. We have a friend that was caring for two parents who were in various stages. The dad had Alzheimer's, the mom had Lewy body. So he's the sole caregiver. So trying to say you have to eat well. I mean, they can just about keep up with the day-to-day thing, and yet, as you gave an example, the son dies, and then who cares for the mom? And that's kind of like the threat we used to use with caregivers, like, if you don't take care of you and something happens to you, what happens to the person you love? And sometimes that serves as a wake-up call, but it's tough. It's really a tough, caregiving is so overwhelming, it's really hard for people to see that they need to serve themselves to survive.
Right. And the intention of Age Sage is to really educate people, empower them, and enrich their life. So when a caregiver is in uncertainty, they do not know what to do, where they are, how long it'll last, what does the future look like, that's very stressful.
Yeah.
But when they have the tools, as far as like, these are the choices, this is what might happen, these are the choices, this is a plan B, so we know when something happens, we know the next step, then that helps decrease the stress, and that will improve their health. And then it's little things like, are you drinking water? Are you getting a little bit of a walk each day? Are you meditating? Things like that. And so those kind of supports can be delivered with the app also. So a lot of times caregivers don't have the time to get out to a support group.
Right.
Because they can't leave the home, or it's too far, or people live far in the rural areas. So we'll have virtual support groups online. People can either call in, they can do a Zoom call, so they can do a video call. So they'll have a whole community in Age Sage that will support them in the journey.
And I think that's so important because when you are a caregiver, particularly with a disease that can be so demanding, it's like having children, and I don't mean any disrespect for your loved one, but just like you can't walk out of your house with a 2 or 3 year old because it's not wise and it doesn't keep them safe. That is very much how it can be with people with dementia. I mean, them falling and what they couldn't get into. I have a friend whose husband was only 66 and was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's that really progressed relatively quickly, and he needed to be placed. And a lot of us had to tell her because, of course, that was heartbreaking. But he was, she would order things on Amazon because she didn't have any chance to shop. And she was teaching, and she would come home and all the boxes would be open and destroyed, and the items would be destroyed, and sometimes it was food, and all the foodstuffs were, that's what she would come home to. So not only now she has no shopping, she has no food, and she has a big mess, and it was she just would break down. And when she realized that she wasn't alone, when a community was around her, it made it a bit easier. It's a painful experience, and I think the emotional toll of having a loved one with dementia is particularly hard for people because you're saying goodbye to the person you love every day. You just see them slipping away. It's a tough one. So the website is
agesage.co.
So company.co. Okay. And you also have another website that people can access to either email you or look at some of those resources, and that's Dr. Cheryl. Is that accurate?
Dr. Cheryl, CHERYL.org.
.org. Okay, so a lot of the information that you've gleaned is available for people there. Is that accurate? Like, if they?
Yes, there's. I have a free ebook, Everything in My Brain in a Book, and if you don't want to read a book, there's video series. There's articles and blogs. I've got a podcast.
So you did kind of create what you said, a little bit of Google for elder care, one-stop shopping, if you will, except no shopping required. It's just available for you.
There's a lot of free information. And if people want more services, then there's some things that they can pay for if they want to, webinars and online support or one-on-one care. Then they can get that. But I wanted to make it so that anybody could take advantage of the advocacy, of the empowerment and education, because there's a lot of people out there that are affected by this, and really it motivates me because there's so many people. Everybody I meet, with a conversation, with some education, equipping them to make the choices, the difficult choices for their loved ones, and empowering them to be an advocate. And afterwards they're saying, I do not know what I would do without you. You changed the trajectory of our life. And those times, those decisions that we make with our parents, they're times that we'll always remember.
Yeah.
So when we can make the decisions, when we know what the choices are, and we can make the decision that's best for our loved one, we can have peace of mind forever, and that's so important. It's so important.
Well, and I think knowing you have somebody that's an expert who's done the research, who has the care, I mean, just the way you laid out your background, you're not somebody out here just taking advantage of people. I mean, you know this stuff inside out. You know what it's like to have to find out all the information by yourself and get surprised with things you didn't know after the fact or something like that. So I think that's really important. I have a tricky question for you. I don't know if you have an answer for it, but one of the things you mentioned, and I know that's been my experience also, and this is not in any way against the medical profession, but how do we get our medical teams, our doctors, even our nurses, to be willing to have the tough conversations? I mean, to just say to somebody, sorry, your mother has this dementia, which in itself is a huge umbrella term. Like, why? Well, because she has Parkinson's. Okay, and we can't cure that, and this is, and not even giving me a roadmap for what that might, look like down the future. Just kind of, your time is up. Do you have any suggestions for the medical profession or ways that we can advocate to get them to pay more attention? I mean, do they know about your site, for one? And how do we help our medical profession be more partners with us so we're not always supplementing? I know it's a tough question, but maybe you have some experience there.
It is a tough question, and part of what we've dealt with, and it seems to be changing a little bit, but certainly not
where
as
we'd like
fast
it to
enough,
be.
is that doctors are trained to heal people. And right now, say for Alzheimer's type of dementia, there is no cure. And they know that sometimes it's a long, painful process,
Yeah.
So if we can, so for me, if I go into a neurologist's office or a general practitioner's office and I tell them, look, I will take that piece, like you can tell them about the diagnosis, and Age Sage will help with the whole social piece and the emotional support piece and the family conversations and
The
helping
resources, that kind
all
of
those
stuff.
resources. We can take that from you. I think that would really help, and also that it's a perspective. I think so. If doctors move from I need to cure you to, look, this isn't really curable, but let's make the most of your life. Let's give you the best quality of life for as long as you have. And that's really my focus. And I think it's also a perspective. I was talking to someone yesterday whose dad passed away with Alzheimer's, and she was just saying how painful it was. And I was telling her about Age Sage, and she's, another person. It's like, I wish I would have had your, the support and Age Sage information and empowerment when I was going through this. She said, it was just so awful. I'd never want me to go through it and have my kids see me go through that. So with help with changing the perspective of reframing it to, it is awful. Like, we wouldn't want to wish it on anybody, but it is what it is right now. It's happening. So how can I have to trust? Because if I don't, I just be in a puddle of sadness on the floor.
Right.
I have to trust that for this person's soul, this is the lesson that they need to learn about. Like, there's a blessing in there for the person going through it. And so then how can I be part of assisting the family to see the gift and the goodness and know that the essence of the person is still there? So when I can be part of that change in perspective and help them with planning, and then show them the purpose, and then them living in a new purpose. How can we support the loved one with dementia? That just changes everything. It goes from people just, feeling so bad and so sad, a lot, and frustrated and overwhelmed, to, you know what, I can do this. There's time to cry, and there's time to kind of vent like that. But then we pick ourselves up and go, like, what is the blessing? Let's look at the essence of the person and just make it a wonderful time. And I've seen it, and I've seen it that when I connect from my essence to the person's essence that has dementia, there's magic that happens.
Right.
And it's funny because nobody will remember, none of my clients remember my name. None of my clients remember my name. It's a humbling job, right? where you give all this, and then it's like, oh yeah, I don't know, what's your name again?
Right,
like, oh,
right,
you know,
right.
It's sort of like being a mother, you know, it's like, I've given you all this. So they never remember my name, but I always can see in their eyes and their behavior that they know and they remember how I made them feel. So to me, that's where if the caregiver can kind of catch that vision of,
it's important for them to understand that, and it's kind of and working with end of life, and also in being with people that are non-responsive in maybe the last 3-4 days of life. You know, my message is always, there's always someone home. There is someone, they may not communicate with you in the way that you're used to, but the communication is there, and their attunement to the feeling level is, you know, so they may not know anything else. They may not know your name, but they can feel your love. So go there with that, you know. One of the things that came to me when you're talking about your resources is, it seems to me that if we could have the general public start to understand this disease, especially because the numbers are on the rise right now. I hope in our lifetimes we see a cure, you know, that may happen, but we're not there yet. And in the meantime, we have to care for the rising number of people that are dealing with it. The app thing, I love that too on the phone, because we are so, I mean, people don't even really have to go to their computers anymore. It's like on their phone. And that is an extraordinary vision. So Oprah was wise to pick you, and I'm so grateful that you've answered the call to help people that need it the way you do. So we'll have to kind of call it quits for right now for this conversation. I hope you'll come back in the future.
Be happy to.
And we have this little book called The Book of Living Love, and there's opportunity to write the name of a client or a loved one that you'd like to remember, because we say to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die.